Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, where we talk a little Timberwolves and we talk about a stock that is about to offer weight loss drugs through the mail. And the stock is through the roof. You want to know more? Stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
Rock and roll. We had that week with, or not week, but, a nice going into the weekend with Cardone. That was pretty fun, John. We got a lot done there because I'm seeing there's the 10X right there.
That's right. 10X, baby. Yeah. And he's been going back and forth with me, Pete, about, you and Pete should be down here in Cabo with us. And I'm like, yeah, well.
If he'd have said it on Friday. If he'd have said it on Friday, we might have taken him up on it.
I would have just jumped on the jet.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
And Jared's also, Pete, saying, well, you guys are coming to a lot of this stuff now. And we'll talk more about it, folks. But we are definitely going to 10X what we're doing and make it a better opportunity for all of you as well. So, Pete, let's dive right into the Macro Minute.
Yep.
I'm going to say the Federal Reserve rate cut is still unlikely before September. You guys can go to the CME site and see that for yourselves. But the European Central Bank may start signaling more strongly that they are going to do something, Pete. So that's what we're paying attention to in macro today.
All right, here's what I'm paying attention to. You were talking about federal something. I'm talking about federal debt. How about that, John? All right, so we're only at 34.5 trillion with a T in debt, and 11 trillion of it has been added to the debt since March of 2020. 11 trillion. So I would say that we need to pay more attention to that than we think. And I tell you what, there's one guy that I very much trust, and he's been talking about this, Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon's like, hey, look, this is not good, and we need to get this figured out. So I think you want to go macro. That's as macro as it gets.
That is indeed, Pete. Well, so then we always cover fantastic futures, folks. And today, boom, with our fantastic futures, I'm going to say it's gold, Pete, and also cocoa. Why cocoa? Because that's one Pete's talked about all year. And in the first 4 months, it was up 180%, Pete. Not 100%. Nearly 200%. But today it's pulling back yet again. And now it's not up nearly as much. It's not even up 100% anymore after the last 2 weeks, Pete. What do you got for futures?
Well, pardon the pun, but I'm going to tell you this. Nat gas is on fire. On April 29th, John, it was $1.95. You know where it is today? $2.73.
Cool.
So we've had a big, big run there, and I think we need to pay attention to that. We need attention to gold, silver, what's going on with, obviously, oil, gas, all of these things. We talk about it all the time, and I think we really have to keep an eye on it. But 2024, the highs so far were on January 11th, and we are at 331 for nat gas. So we're still off of that, but boy, this has been a really rapid run to the upside over the last, call it, month. Maybe even a little bit less.
Yeah, it's a big run, folks. And nat gas moving up that fast tells you that people want that instant on power because you're not heating your home with the nat gas, not in the summer, but you are running power plants with it. So worth noting. All right, Pete, HIMS, HIMS. This is a company that is basically telehealth. What does that mean? That means that they deliver health aids, for instance, to men and women. And those, for the most part, were minoxidil for people who are follically challenged like that, as well as and that's men and women, by the way. And then also some of those ED or erectile dysfunction drugs, Pete. Well, so that built the company. That's what they built it on. But now they want these GLP-1 injections. What is that? Ozempic. That's what they want to have through telehealth. So basically, you can just go online with their doctor and have the doctor say, yeah, you're fat. We'll prescribe this Ozempic for you. You'll be fine. Pete, there's a lot more people that are fat than people that need minoxidil or people that need those ED drugs. I think it's an epidemic. What do you think?
Oh, it's an epidemic. Here's a stat that I found, John. 70% of American adults are either obese or extremely overweight. So I think, to your point, this is an area that if you call yourself a wellness company, you've got to be focused on this. They're going after it. People are so excited about the fact that you can find different ways, injections as well as oral. That's what we're talking about here with Hims and Hers. That's why that stock's up 31%. That's why in the first hour of trade, John, they turned over 35 million shares. Its average full day is 6.7 million. So the volume is there. 52-week highs, that was hit. It was $20. They shattered where it was. I'll tell you what, when you look at free cash flow, that's pretty solid. You look at the balance sheet, it's very solid. You look at shorts, there might even be a bit of a squeeze play, but I don't think it's as much of the squeeze. I think it certainly is the news itself, but then add that to the 8 or 9% short, you get a stock that's up 31% today. It's pretty amazing, John, but this wellness thing is, it's really an interesting thing along with this teledoc type idea that you were talking about.
Yeah, and Pete, I think we can't overstate how difficult it might be for a man or a woman to go in and say, yeah, sexually, I need this to help me out. It's probably more difficult to go in and do that face-to-face with another man or woman. Not quite as tough about the minoxidil side. And there are probably a lot of people, Pete, who will go over for this Ozempic just because they don't want to go into the doctor or to the clinic and have people go, God, you let yourself go. Holy crap. You know, you're going to be on this stuff forever. But doing it without having to do that face-to-face embarrassment, I think is a big driver for a lot of people, Pete. So I'm in agreement with you. I think this is a slam dunk. Now let's talk about website designs, Pete, because this one exploding as well. Website design, e-commerce, Wix. So a lot of you know that if you want to start a website, you want to start doing some e-commerce and all the rest, well, you might reach out to somebody like Wix. They're one of them that makes it very easy to build a website and then to basically bolt on that e-commerce so you can sell stuff, not just have some website that nobody sees or goes to or buys things from. And their numbers, Pete, pretty astounding. No wonder the shares are higher.
Yep, they're higher by 20% last I looked. It might be up or down off of that, but it's been up as much as 20% today. It's got heavy volume. It's hit 52-week highs. You've got an e-commerce platform here where you look at the revenue, it's up 12% year over year. That's a nice big jump. And this is a mature company. We're not talking about some just got out there, it's just gotten public and everything. This has been around for a while. Earnings, that was the year over year strength that I saw that I really liked. The $1.29, they were looking for 91 cents. The outlook was raised. The bookings and revenue were both strong beats. Everything about what they reported, John, makes a lot of sense why we're hitting those 52-week highs. I don't think that's going to be over with. I think this is a company that's actually moving in the right direction. And as we start to see, as we get more, we're in the first half of the year. As we get into the second half of the year, I think this stock has plenty of room still to the upside.
Well, that's a big statement, and it probably does, Pete. I mean, their guidance for their bookings and for revenue are through the roof.
Yeah.
So when you see somebody confident enough, a CEO, CFO, confident enough to offer that kind of guidance, that's probably a decent trigger. And a lot of people are enjoying the ride today.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about one of the stocks Pete used to be the specialist in, Micron Technology. And it's one of my favorite plays, Pete, for the AI or artificial intelligence run, because you got to have memory. In fact, they're very memory intense. You know what else it is? Electricity dependent, Pete, which might also be part of that natural gas trade that you talked about, because AI is extremely thirsty when it comes to electricity, Pete. We'll talk more about that later, folks, but nonetheless, there's a big demand that increases with these EVs and with AI. So this one, Morgan Stanley comes out and pounds the table for it, Pete. Unfortunately for some folks, they just missed this one because they were buying a lot of calls a couple weeks ago, Pete, but the timing was off. They didn't extend it as long as they should have. So coulda, shoulda, woulda, I guess. But this one's one that the hedge funds have had their eye on for a while.
By the way, another 52-week high. That's 3 stocks in a row where we're talking about how these things are just jumping like crazy. I mean, Micron Technology, John, when you look at Morgan Stanley, the upgrade, the price target that they did. Now, the price target's interesting. I think the price target was like 131. Well, the stock's 131 today. Yeah. It's gone from 60 to 131 already. I mean, we're talking about not year to date. That's 52 weeks, but nonetheless, a really big run that we're seeing out of that. And it's absolutely incredible. And as you said, AI, what people don't know about AI is it's not just about 1 or 2 specific chips. You've actually got to tap into Micron Technology as well. Their strong demand that they've got is absolutely something that we'll hear more about tonight, probably Wednesday, when we hear from NVIDIA. But that's something that's a different thing altogether. But you talked about how the demand is there, the demand for energy is there. That's exactly what this is providing. So Micron, I think, is in a sweet spot right now in terms of all of the different companies that are shooting for a bigger position into the AI. We hear it all the time. We know that Apple was a little late. Looks to me, based upon the way Apple's been moving lately, maybe Apple actually, after all those acquisitions that they made last year and everything else, maybe they're turning that around a little quicker than people thought, John. And I'll tell you what, I think Micron's doing one heck of a job. 52-week highs. It's going higher.
52-week high after 52-week high, pretty amazing run. And then you've got Carnival Cruise Lines, Pete, which is not at a 52-week high, but an analyst over at Wells Fargo, I think, Pete, was just really bullish on the prospects for Norwegian Cruise Lines, NCLH, as well as Royal Caribbean, RCL, and Carnival Cruise Line. It seems to be riding that wave, if you will, Pete, pun is intended, of course, for some of these strong bookings that the Wells Fargo analyst sees.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. This thing kind of ebbs and flows with us when we see these cruise ships. They either love them or they hate them. I don't know if there's much in between. Right now, they're loving them. And you just talked about Norwegian. We also could talk about Royal. They've got new ships that are coming out. They've got some industry strength when it comes to bookings, as you mentioned. So there's a lot of reasons to like it right now. They do have a cash burn. They have an incredibly high amount of debt, but that's part of the business that they run. I don't know. When I look at a PE of 14 and I see where they are right now, if this demand can hold up, they probably are a little bit cheap and they probably do have a little bit more room to the upside. I'm not as excited about this name to the upside because I think at any moment we could hear about, people are starting to pull back a little bit. They're still concerned. We still have inflation and blah, blah, blah. And maybe that pulls back. But for right now, they're doing very, very well. This is one where I'll watch it, but it's got to pull back before I get real interested in this one, John.
Yeah, back when it was single digits in early 22, Pete, $7 or something like that. I remember Lazary buying a bunch of the bonds, and I bought some of those bonds too. So, bang. Obviously, he's killing it with that stuff. I don't know how many he still has, Pete, but many of you remember Mark Lazary is one of the owners of I can't remember. Did he sell all of his stake, Pete? He was one of the owners of the Bucks. And they had Giannis and they won the whole thing. Well, since we're getting into stocks, I'm guessing we're getting into Pete's Timber Puppies and Anthony Edwards and Big Cat and Gobert and all that stuff. Did I guess correctly?
Oh, yeah. Let's roll the tape on Ant. This guy is electric. I love him. Love him.
Carl Anthony Towns. Because of him.
Thank
Cat, y'all. Thank Cat.
How many of you knew that's why they call him Cat? Carl
the baddest
Anthony
big on the
Towns.
planet. Cat. Y'all know it. It ain't hard to see it. Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. The Timberwolves will be there.
The best two words they ever had, Game 7. And now they're past Game 7. These guys are fired up for sure.
Oh, and tell everybody, Pete, that might not have seen it. what he told the locker room attendants in Game 6 before they even played.
I don't know these guys, John. I'll tell you what. Karl Anthony Towns loves to be in front of the mic. You know who loves it even more? That guy right there, Anthony. Yeah. Anthony Edwards is
I'll tell you. He said, Pete, we're going to be back here for Game 7. And they're like, you got to get through Game 6. We're going to be here for Game 7. You guys be ready because we're going to be here. And he was right. And the Denver Nuggets, last year's champs, got just plowed in that final, and they came back from a record deficit, right, Pete?
Yep. Down 20 points, and came all the way back and actually extended it. They didn't just win by one. They won by a few more than one. But unbelievable game. They had it's been an incredible series. This was the team that beat them last year early on and then went on to win the whole thing. Now you've beaten that team, so nobody's got that mantle yet. So now it's going to be really, really interesting. Is Boston going to be great? They've been great all year, but when they got to the playoffs, John, all of a sudden there's been some battles that they've had to fight through to get where they are. Now the Timberwolves, they just seem to just bounce back like I've never seen. So here's a way to look at this one, John. About a year or so ago, they traded for Rudy Gobert. And everybody was panicked, and they said this is the biggest mistake of all time. Well, maybe not, as it turns out. Maybe that was the missing piece of this team. It's the one piece that's brand new on the team. They had Naz Reid. We had Anthony Edwards. We had Big Cats, and we had all these various players. Jaden Daniels is absolutely on fire. All of our next tier guys have played really well. But here is part of the trade that still sits out there, John. 2025, first-round pick. 2026, it's a pick swap. 27, first-round pick. 29, first-round pick. Timberwolves don't have any first-round picks for quite a while. That's what I'm laying out here right now. So, but does it matter? I say no, because if you made the trade, if the trade made sense, you're pushing your team into the right direction. The difficult thing is going to be to hold on to Karl Anthony Towns, Big Cat, because you've got some salaries that are going to be awfully big, and there's going to be luxury tax issues and all the things that go with that. But all that being said, the present owner of the Timberwolves looks like he's going to be the owner a little longer. And if that's the case, John, I'd say the value of the team has gone up by anywhere close to between $500,000 and $1 billion.
$500 million and $1 billion.
Yeah, $500 million and $1 billion. So yeah. I think he's got a little bit of extra cash to maybe decide, you know what, maybe we do deal with this luxury tax like everybody else. The Timberwolves sell out. They have incredible fans, and we'll see how far they go from here. But it's going to be interesting. They got Mark Cuban's Dallas team, John. I know he sold most of it, but I think he still has a piece of it, right?
Oh, yeah. He only sold 52% or 51%. And I don't even know if those are voting, Pete. That was the Adelson family. Sheldon Adelson's wife bought in with the idea being that if she brings her stature in the gaming industry to Dallas, that Dallas may, one of the, those Bible Belt states, Pete, may actually let them have casino along with that stadium, which might make that one of the most valuable franchises in basketball. And even though Pete doesn't want to hear it, folks, I'll point out that there are probably groups putting themselves in front of the owner of the Timberwolves to say, you know what, in Vegas, this might be a $7 billion team. And the last team that Minnesota had that did that, Pete, was the Lakers.
Yep. For those who don't know about the Lakers, it's why they're called the Lakers, the land of 10,000. I'm there right now. It's funny how many people have no clue why are they the Lakers. Well, that's why. All right, John.
A lot of lakes in LA.
No, let's jump to the next one, John. We're going to do like a lot of these guys on the sports side of things will do. We're going to do something really stupid this early. Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year? Now, when I say that, you've got to look at, all right, how'd they do in free agency? What do you think is different about the team? How are they looking from the draft standpoint? Do they really fit? Can those players play? Who do you think right now, when you look at it, NFC, AFC, who do you think is going to be at the Super Bowl next year? Not necessarily win it, but who's going to be there?
Well, the 49ers still, even after losing Armistead, Pete, the 49ers are still going to be in the mix, no doubt.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll have quite as much trouble from the Seattle, but I do think the Niners and, believe it or not, I think our Bears might actually be playing the Niners in the NFC. We'll see. I mean, when you look at the schedule, Pete, that just came out, the Bears are starting with, I think, 5 of the worst teams picked to be the worst by all these sports writers. They play 5 of them in the first 7 weeks. So could they be 7-2 or something like that? They could. Could Caleb Williams, if they start hot, everybody just talks about him as the second coming? They could. Of course, knowing our Bears, they could also fall apart. But if they have a great defense, San Francisco is going to struggle a little bit, Pete, without that big man in the middle. Yeah. I didn't see them replacing him. That defense, that wasn't their problem. Not that the offense was, but it was just, man, it's an oblong ball, Pete. It bounces funny sometimes.
Yep. Well, I fully agree with you on San Francisco. I actually think Parasol was a great guy. That was their first pick that they had. They went with a wide receiver from Florida. This kid is unbelievable. He's electric. They already got receivers that are great, so they're just adding to it. Oh, and by the way, they also added a running back who might have, I think he was the fastest running back in the entire draft, a kid out of Louisville, who's very, very, he's solid, he's big enough, he's big, and he can run. I mean, so that combination, I think, adds to their offensive weapons that can really scare some defenses out there. I look at the Detroit Lions as the one who might battle them pretty good. And they tightened up their defense, John. They went cornerback, and they went cornerback, and then a round or two later, they went for a safety. So they're building up that defensive backfield just to be an absolute, unbelievable defense. They already have the front guys. Now they got the back guys. Could be pretty cool. I look at the Chiefs. You know what's interesting? Anytime, of course, you've got Patrick Mahomes, they're going to be tough, right? I mean, we just know that. But Xavier Worthy, the receiver, he's only a 4.2 flat guy who can run the 40, who's very small, but the guy, they had somebody very similar to him not too many years ago. They traded off to Miami. They've got speed, like they needed more speed or they needed more weapons, but what the heck? Give it to Mahomes. And then you got Cincy, you got the Bills. I'm going to go with Baltimore because I like what they did in the draft, John, and more so in free agency, because they actually have Derrick Henry in the backfield this year with giving the quarterback a little bit more time. I think Jackson's going to be able to not have to run as much and hand it off, and that'll give him the opportunity to run on a third down passing play. If it's there, he can do it, but he's not going to get as beat up. So I don't know. I almost think it's going to be Baltimore lined up probably against the 49ers, but maybe Detroit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I understood what you were saying about Philly with that strengthening of the defensive backfield, but yeah, we don't want to overlook Detroit. And they were a bad decision by the great coach to they were that close, Pete, literally that close to go into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So it was a gutsy call, but it was one that, the odds were not in his favor on that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, odds are, folks, we will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. He is, of course, Pete Najarian. I'm Jon Najarian. We encourage you to check out marketrebellion.com/get started. That's marketrebellion.com/get started, where you can learn more about trading stocks, options, futures. We've got coaches, we've got mentors, we've got subscriptions, we've got it all. Check it out at marketrebellion.com/get started, and we'll be back tomorrow at 1.